Stop scrolling. The most dangerous man in New York didn't fall because of bullets, cops, or rival gangs. He fell because of a florist with scars on her wrists. Vincent Russo thought he could control blood, fear, and power, but the second he looked at Lily Morgan, the whole empire started cracking. And the craziest part? The enemies who couldn't kill him figured out the real weak spot in seconds. This isn't romance. This is a slow-motion gang war triggered by one woman he was never supposed to love.
Case notes on Subject A, Vincent Russo, indicate that individuals with his antisocial profile rarely exhibit affective fear. Yet a notable tremor was observed the night he identified the florist, Subject B, Lily Morgan, as a new, uncontrollable variable in his meticulously managed world. Subject B utilized her profession as a controlled environment, a buffer against a world that had previously inflicted significant trauma. Their initial visual contact at a social gathering represented an intersection of two distinct pathologies, an event which immediately exposed a critical, exploitable vulnerability in Subject A to his rivals. This file will document the formation of a traumatic bond, the consequences of a predator's compromised defenses, and the clinical cost of attachment in a high lethality environment. Before this analysis commences, a procedural note. Reader engagement metrics will be tracked via likes and geographic comments to measure the dissemination of this case study. The initial encounter occurred Saturday evening at the Metropolitan Club in Manhattan, a high-stimulus social setting characterized by elaborate displays of wealth. Subject B, Lily Morgan, adopted a position on the periphery of the event, a classic manifestation of social anxiety. She held a wine glass as a social prop, her attention fixated on her primary attachment figure, Sophie, who was the focus of the gathering. The subject's observation of her friend's overt happiness served only to highlight her own internal state of alienation and distress. The subject's new husband, Michael, engaged her in a dance, and Subject B registered a somatic symptom of distress in her chest, a familiar psychosomatic ache. This response was not identified as envy, but as a profound sense of otherness. While surrounded by individuals displaying high levels of social confidence, the subject experienced acute feelings of inadequacy. She was observed making a compulsive adjustment to her dress sleeve, an action intended to conceal scar tissue on her left wrist. These markings are a permanent physical record of a prior traumatic event and function as a constant psychological trigger. Her internal monologue at this point would be one of self-correction. The primary attachment figure, Sophie, approached her, exhibiting a state of mild euphoria consistent with the celebration and alcohol consumption. Her perception, however, remained acute, immediately identifying the subject's compulsive sleeve tugging. What thing? Subject B attempted a feigned ignorance, a common defense mechanism against intervention. The primary attachment figure identified this behavior as the subject's disappearing thing, a pattern of social withdrawal. She then initiated physical contact, a firm but gentle linking of arms in an attempt to disrupt the isolative pattern. I'm not much of a dancer, you're not much of a hider either, but that doesn't stop you from trying. Subject B produced a minimal smile. It's your wedding day. I'm happy just watching you be happy. The primary support's expression changed, referencing their shared history, specifically a hospitalization 3 years prior following Subject B's major traumatic event. I know crowds aren't your thing. I know fancy parties make you feel like you're underwater. But I need you to promise me something, anything. Promise me you'll let yourself have one good thing tonight. One conversation with someone who isn't me. One dance. One moment where you're not cataloging all the exits. This directly addresses Subject B's hypervigilance. You deserve good things, Lily, even if you don't believe it yet. Before subject B could formulate a response, the primary support was re-engaged by her partner, leaving the subject alone with her anxiety. Subject B's internal monologue reveals a core cognitive distortion, a belief that positive stimuli are precursors to danger, a schema developed from her past trauma. She considered moving to a less stimulating area when she registered the distinct sensation of being observed, a trigger for her highly developed threat detection system. The subject has a documented history of hyper-awareness stemming from a past assault. This instance, however, felt qualitatively different. In the aftermath of her primary trauma, she exhibited extreme hypervigilance to all gazes. Following 2 years of cognitive behavioral therapy, these symptoms had subsided, but this sensation was distinct. A slow scan of the room located the source. Subject A. He was positioned near the bar, holding a glass of whiskey, and made no attempt to conceal his observation. When a subject is caught in a sustained stare, the typical social response is aversion. Subject A, however, maintained his fixed gaze, a clear display of social dominance. He was a tall male, over 6 feet, with dark hair and a facial structure more notable for its severity than its conventional attractiveness. He possessed a sharp jawline, a strong nose, and eyes that were difficult to assess from a distance. He was dressed in a tailored black suit, an indicator of significant financial resources. It was not his physical presentation that caused Subject B's physiological stress response. It was the nature of his gaze. It lacked the typical markers of pity, social awkwardness, or even romantic interest common in such settings. His expression was one of intense, objectifying scrutiny, as if she were a complex problem he was methodically deconstructing. Subject B should have reverted to her baseline avoidance behavior. Instead, she engaged, maintaining eye contact in an uncharacteristic act of defiance. A corner of his mouth shifted, a micro-expression indicating approval. He then began moving toward her, his approach confident and purposeful. This action triggered a panic response in Subject B, who was unprepared for direct social engagement. Her grip on her wine glass tightened. "You're Sophie's friend." His voice was deeper than anticipated, with a slight vocal fry. "The florist!" Subject B exhibited surprise. "How did you—" "Sophie's been talking about you all week. Said her best friend was doing all the flowers personally because she didn't trust anyone else to get the roses right." He possessed pre-acquired intelligence on the subject. He indicated a nearby centerpiece, a mix of cream roses and white peonies, constructed to the primary support specifications. "I'm guessing that was you." "Yes." The monosyllabic response was more stable than the subject's internal state. "I own a shop in Brooklyn, Petals and Thorns." "Vincent." He initiated physical contact. "I'm Michael's cousin, the one nobody talks about at family dinners." This use of self-deprecating humor is a common disarming tactic. Subject B responded with an involuntary smile while they shook hands. His grip was assessed as warm and firm, released at a socially appropriate interval. "Are you that terrible? Depends on who you ask." A brief, unreadable micro-expression was noted. "But I promise I'm on my best behavior tonight. Scout's honor." "Were you ever a scout?" "Absolutely not." This directness elicited a genuine smile from Subject B, causing a visible reduction in her physical tension. His lack of pretense was disarming. "What do you do, Vincent, when you're not being the cousin nobody talks about?" "Import-export." The response was delivered smoothly, suggesting rehearsal, mostly Mediterranean goods, olive oil, wine, that sort of thing. The content of the statement was mundane, but the delivery felt incongruent. a clear indicator of deception. Subject B's trauma has rendered her highly sensitive to such inconsistencies, having practiced her own social dissimulation regarding her psychological state for years. She registered the incongruence in his casual tone and the lack of correspondence with his expression. However, she also recognized the distinction between privacy and active deception, postulating that Subject A may have his own unobserved traumas. "That sounds interesting," she replied, adhering to social convention to prolong the interaction. Subject A's expression shifted, showing what appeared to be approval. "You're a terrible liar." "Excuse me, import-export is boring. This is a classic manipulation tactic, breaking social frames to create forced intimacy." "You are being polite." He consumed some of his beverage, maintaining eye contact over the glass. "I appreciate the effort, but you don't have to pretend with me." This statement is designed to position himself as a unique and perceptive observer. Subject B exhibited a physiological stress response, specifically flushing of the neck. "I wasn't. You were. And it's fine. Most people do." He set his glass down. "Want to know what I really think is interesting?" "What?" "How someone who clearly hates crowds and fancy parties created something this beautiful for her best friend." He gestured at the floral arrangements. "That takes either love or insanity, possibly both." "Definitely both," Subject B admitted. "Sophie wanted specific roses that only bloom in April, which meant I had to source them from 3 different suppliers and keep them alive in my shop for 2 weeks. Sleep was minimal, yet the task was completed. A logical outcome, given the subject's stated bond." Vincent maintained a prolonged analytical gaze, inducing in Lily the discomforting sensation of being psychologically dissected, a state she typically avoids. He then posed a diagnostic query. "When did you last receive such a gesture of care?" The question registered as a somatic shock. Lily's vocal response was aborted. The factual answer was never or not, since the clinical setting where she was designated a subject requiring careful management and placating language. This, however, could not be articulated to the unknown male. Nor could she explain the conditioned adaptation of minimizing her needs to avoid becoming a burden. A retreat was necessary. Her gesture was a vague signifier for the general gathering, for any vector away from his penetrating assessment. Sophie's absence was offered as a social justification. He countered with precise, observed data. "She is occupied with peers near the dessert station." His assessment was that her absence would go unnoticed for a short duration. "You have been monitoring the environment." "A conditioned response," he stated. A dark affect flickered across his features. "I require a constant tactical awareness of all personnel, their activities, and their potential for disruption." "You anticipate disruption at a nuptial celebration?" "I anticipate disruption in all environments." Vincent's delivery was affectless, as if discussing meteorological conditions, but Lily detected the underlying clinical truth. Here was an individual whose existence, like her own, was predicated on anticipating the next catastrophic event. But not for this interval. "Tonight, my designated role is Michael's cousin, attempting to persuade an attractive female to engage in a ritual dance." Lily's cardiac rhythm faltered. "I do not engage in that activity, nor do I." "The purpose, then?" "Because Sophie's assessment is correct. You are entitled to one positive stimulus this evening." Vincent presented his hand, palm upward. An invitation, not a command. "And perhaps I am as well." Lily's gaze fell to his hand, noting the dermal callosities on his knuckles that were inconsistent with his cover story of viticulture, observing how his digits remained steady while her own exhibited tremors. She processed Sophie's directive, the concepts of promises and positive outcomes, and the notion of allowing her own existence for a brief moment. She considered the scar tissue on her wrists, concealed by lavender fabric, and speculated on the traumas Vincent concealed beneath his tailored suit. One dance, she heard her own voice articulate, "Afterward, I revert to a state of non-presence." Agreed. His hand enveloped hers, its temperature and mass registering as solid, and Lily permitted herself to be guided to the designated area where other pairs performed a slow, formalized courtship ritual. Vincent maneuvered her into a standard posture, one hand on her waist, the other clasping hers, and initiated movement. He had falsified his capabilities. He was, in fact, highly proficient at dancing. "You are an inefficient prevaricator," Lily stated, echoing his own words, and felt a low-frequency vibration from his chest, indicative of controlled amusement. "It is possible I have had extensive practice." They moved without verbal communication, and Lily attempted to access memories of being held in this manner, to pinpoint when she had developed a flinch response to incidental physical contact. Vincent's hand on her waist was firm, but not indicative of ownership. His grasp on her hand was gentle enough to permit immediate disengagement, yet she felt no impulse to withdraw. "May I pose a question?" Vincent's vocalization was low, calibrated for her hearing alone. "And you may dismiss me if the inquiry is too invasive." Agreed. The sleeves, your recurring tick of checking them. His thumb made contact with the inner part of her wrist, the concealed one, so lightly it was almost a sensory illusion. "Someone inflicted injury upon you." It was delivered as a statement, not a question. Lily's respiration ceased and her motor control faltered. Vincent stabilized her without comment, maintaining the motion, keeping her within the secure perimeter of his arms. "Yes," she whispered, as prevarication now seemed futile. Some quality in this individual compelled her toward truthful disclosure. It was a chronologically distant event. Was retribution exacted? The question was delivered in the same neutral tone as his previous statements. But Lily perceived the rigid structure beneath it, a cold and hazardous element that caused her to retract her body just enough to observe Vincent's face. His expression was unchanged. He appeared calm, almost relaxed, but his eyes had assumed a flat affect that sent a chilling sensation down her spine. "Incarcerated," she articulated. "He is incarcerated." "Satisfactory." Vincent's hand tightened marginally at her waist. "That is a satisfactory outcome." They completed the dance without speaking, and as the music concluded, Vincent stepped back with the slight bow that would have seemed absurd if performed by another. On him, the gesture was effective. "I thank you for the dance, Lily Morgan. Thank you for," she could not formulate a conclusion, "for perceiving her, for not posing questions she could not process, for making her feel for a few minutes that she was perhaps less damaged than her self-assessment indicated." Vincent smiled, a genuine expression this time, which altered his entire facial topography and made him appear less mature, less threatening. "For being inefficient at prevarication." "You are welcome." Then he was gone, reabsorbed into the crowd, and Lily remained on the dance floor with an accelerated heart rate and the residual tactile memory of his hand on her waist. She located Sophie an hour later, moderately intoxicated and euphoric, attached to Michael as if he were an object that might dematerialize. "You have reappeared." Sophie seized Lily's hand, pulling her into close proximity. "I observed you dancing with an unknown male." "Who was he?" His physical appearance was optimal. Did you acquire his contact information? Please confirm you acquired it. Michael's cousin, Lily reported, still feeling disoriented. Vincent? A nonverbal signal passed between Michael and Sophie, a communication Lily could not decode. Michael's smile remained fixed, but tension manifested around his eyes. Vincent was present. Michael scanned the crowd. I did not see him. He identified himself as your cousin. That is accurate. It is just Michael exchanged another look with Sophie. Vincent does not typically attend family functions. Our association is no longer close. For what reason? Divergent life paths, divergent choices. Michael's tone was meticulously neutral. I would not. Look, he is not a malevolent entity, but he is a complex case. It is probably advisable to simply erase the encounter from your memory. But Lily could not. Not the way Vincent had observed her, as if she were a significant variable. Not the coldness in his eyes when he had inquired if the perpetrator had been subjected to consequences. Not the sensation of being seen, truly analyzed, for the first time in years. She returned that night to her small dwelling above the flower shop, engaged the locks twice instead of the customary 3 times, and lay in bed examining the ceiling. Divergent life paths, divergent choices. What was the meaning of that coded warning? The shop was quiet on Monday morning, which was congruent with Lily's state. She had worked late Sunday night constructing a floral arrangement for a funeral, and her eyes felt abraded from exhaustion. The roses from Sophie's wedding were beginning to decay in their containers, the petal edges browning, and Lily systematically deconstructed them for compost. The bell above the door chimed. I will be there momentarily, Lily announced without looking up. Allow me a second to... There is no urgency. Her head snapped upward. Vincent was positioned in the doorway of her shop, appearing entirely incongruous among the flora-worn furniture and artisanal signage. He was wearing denim and a dark sweater, a more casual attire than the suit, but projecting an equal level of expense, and he held a paper cup in each hand. Coffee, he said, elevating one cup slightly. I was uncertain of your preferences, so I procured it black and brought sugar and cream separately. The barista registered my behavior as aberrant, but I concluded that risk mitigation was the superior strategy. Lily just stared. Her mouth had become desiccated. What is your purpose here? I wish to observe your shop and deliver coffee. The coffee was the primary objective. Vincent moved to the counter, placing both cups carefully between a bucket of tulips and her appointment log. You departed before I could inquire if you wanted to procure coffee at a future time. I decided to employ a more direct method. How did you ascertain my location? You informed me on Saturday. Petals and Thorns, Brooklyn. He smiled, the same near smile from the wedding. There is only a single listing, advantageous for commerce, disadvantageous for privacy. You researched me. I did. Is that classified as unsettling behavior? Vincent provided. Yes, probably. But I spent all of Sunday in a state of cognitive fixation on you, and I have been conditioned not to ignore significant data points. So I am here, engaging in unsettling behavior and providing you with coffee. If you instruct me to leave, I will comply. But my hope is that you will consume the coffee first. Lily picked up the cup, more as a displacement activity for her hands than out of a desire for the beverage. It was still warm from the premium establishment 3 blocks away that charges $7 for a medium size. This is a pathological situation. Marginally. You have no data on me. I would like to acquire it. Vincent. She did not know what to articulate, how to explain that she was not the type of subject to whom one brings expensive coffee on Monday mornings, that she had learned to lower expectations to mitigate the impact of disappointment, that positive stimuli always presented with a risk of injury, and she could not sustain further psychological damage. Listen. Vincent leaned against the counter, his posture as casual as if this were a weekly ritual. I am aware this is anomalous. I know my approach is overly direct and likely activating your threat response, but I am not proficient at social games, and I surmise you are not either, so I will state my intention plainly. State what? I have been unable to cease cognitive activity concerning you since Saturday. The way you smiled when Sophie was dancing, the way you checked your sleeves when you believed you were unobserved, the way you danced with me despite being in a state of terror. His dark eyes held hers. I do not know what this is yet, perhaps nothing, perhaps something, but I would like to investigate, and I believe you might as well. Lily's hands tightened on the coffee cup. I am not seeking a relational bond. Neither am I. Then what is the objective? Coffee, conversation, observation of the outcome. Vincent shrugged. No pressure, no expectations, just two individuals who are both profoundly inefficient at prevarication becoming acquainted. It was pathological. He was pathological. The entire situation was pathological, but Lily observed herself nodding in agreement. Okay, she whispered. Coffee. Vincent's entire facial structure transformed when he smiled. Yes, just coffee. The best intelligence I have received all week. He picked up his own cup, raising it in a small salute. To inefficient liars and opportunities for course correction. Lily touched her cup to his and attempted to suppress thoughts of sharp edges and the high cost of positive outcomes. The subject, Lily, displayed avoidance in acknowledging Vincent's systematic scanning of the shop's exits and sightlines, a repeat of behavior observed at a prior social gathering. She struggled with the cognitive dissonance of a man who brought coffee to a near stranger, yet possessed hands calloused by work other than his stated trade. As precipitation began, Vincent remained for 3 hours. These visits formed an unscheduled pattern of positive reinforcement that the subject felt unable to disrupt. On Tuesday, he presented pastries from a bakery she had mentioned in passing. On Wednesday, though without a gift, he assisted with business operations, displaying an unexpected proficiency for an individual claiming ignorance in the field. Thursday, he appeared with more coffee and a used text on botanical illustration, selected for her interests. The subject made a verbal request for him to cease these visits on Friday morning, even as her actions contradicted this by accepting the beverage he offered. This will incite gossip, she stated. Unimportant, he replied. Vincent turned away from her, examined an orchid display. These are a new acquisition. They arrived yesterday, she confirmed. A client purchased them for her partner, citing the flowers' significance to their first meeting. Lily consumed the coffee, prepared to her exact specifications, a detail he had noted on Tuesday. His observation was meticulous. Is there no better use of your time than loitering in a floral establishment all week? At present, no. Vincent turned, assuming a relaxed posture against the window. Ambient light altered his features, shifting his eye color from brown to bronze. Operations are slow. The import-export sector. Correct. Your statement is false, and your detection of it is consistent. His expression shifted, indicating a mixture of amusement and what could be interpreted as respect. Most individuals lack that perception. Lily set down her cup and adopted a closed-off posture. 5 days of conditioning had apparently emboldened her to challenge the pretense. What is your actual profession? I have told you. Primarily Mediterranean goods. Vincent. A profound silence fell between them, broken only by a passing vehicle. A visible tensing and relaxing of his mandible suggested an internal decision-making process. My family maintains business interests in this city, he stated with deliberate articulation. Logistics, transport, some real estate assets. I assist in managing those operations. That remains an incomplete disclosure. It does. Vincent's gaze was direct, unwavering. But it is the maximum I can provide at this juncture. If that proves insufficient and you require me to withdraw, I will comply. Lily was presented with a clear warning signal, a strategic distancing maneuver, which she should have accepted. However, after 3 years of constructing defensive psychological barriers, Vincent had, in 5 days, successfully identified and exploited a structural weakness. Acceptable, she vocalized. Acceptable? It's acceptable. You may remain. For the time being, Lily re-engaged with the coffee cup, a displacement activity for her hands. But I am maintaining a ledger of your omissions. A slight relaxation in Vincent's posture was observed, indicating relief. He had assessed a genuine risk of rejection. A fair condition. He moved from the window to the opposite side of the counter. May I pose a question? That is contingent on the subject matter. The scar tissue on your wrists? You stated it was an injury inflicted by another. Vincent's tone modulated to a softer, more cautious frequency. You did not specify the perpetrator, the motive, or the aftermath. The subject's hand moved reflexively to her left sleeve, a somatic response to the inquiry. That constitutes multiple questions. Answering is not compulsory. I simply... Vincent paused, selecting his words with atypical deliberation. I wish to understand the parameters of your trauma, your potential triggers. What you're dealing with. A poor lexical choice, my intent... He gestured through his hair, his tone betraying frustration. My intent is to avoid inadvertently causing distress due to my ignorance of your history. Lily observed him, this disruptive element who had entered her controlled environment. His palpable discomfort seemed to authenticate his concern, fracturing his typical confident facade to reveal something more genuine. His name was David, she said, her voice low. The relationship lasted 8 months. Initial presentations were flawless. He exhibited charm, attentiveness, all the traits I believed I desired. The recitation was difficult, but she continued. He then began to display symptoms of possessiveness and pathological jealousy. Social contact required extensive justification. My attire was subject to his approval. My existence became contingent on his permission. Vincent became completely motionless. With his hands flat on the counter, the subject could observe his knuckles blanching from pressure. I attempted to terminate the relationship. She paused to regulate her breathing. His reaction was adverse. He committed breaking and entering. A knife was involved. My memory of the event is fragmented. I regained consciousness in a hospital, wrists bandaged with my friend Sophie present. Were the wounds self-inflicted? Vincent's question was barely audible. The cuts. No, he inflicted them. It was staged as a suicide attempt. Lily forced eye contact. The police located him intoxicated in his vehicle nearby. He is serving 12 years for attempted homicide, among other charges I actively suppress. A significant pause followed. When Vincent finally spoke, His voice possessed the same detached, cold quality from the wedding, an affect that made him seem like a different individual. 12 years is an insufficient sentence. I agree, Lily stated, but it was the outcome. Should he be released, he will not pose a threat to me again. I have taken precautions. Lily touched her sleeve, an ingrained, self-soothing gesture. A restraining order, new residence, new phone number. He is unaware of my location. Good. Vincent's hands unclenched marginally. That is a positive outcome. The disclosure remained between them. Lily anticipated the conventional display of pity, the social withdrawal that typically follows the revelation of significant trauma. Instead, Vincent's assessment of her remained unchanged from their first encounter. She was a complex problem he wished to solve. Thank you, he said at last, for disclosing that. You inquired. I did. And you were not obligated to respond. Vincent raised his coffee cup. For whatever it's worth, I find you to be exceptionally resilient. I am not. You are. You endured a catastrophic event and reconstructed a life regardless. You established a business, maintained a key social support. You relearned how to function in the world. His gaze was steady. That requires a degree of courage most people never have to summon. Lily's throat constricted. She looked downward, attempting to control an unexpected lacrimal response. I still check the door locks 3 times before sleeping. As do I. You do? An old behavior, Vincent stated, his tone deliberately lightened. Different etiologies, I imagine, but an identical ritual. We all have our compulsions. What are yours? My compulsions? You are now aware of mine. Reciprocity seems appropriate. Vincent produced a smile that did not engage his eyes. I have profound trust issues. I operate on a default assumption of negative intent. I average perhaps 4 hours of sleep. He paused. And I have a tendency to resolve conflicts with financial or coercive pressure, even when those tools are inappropriate. That last item seems highly specific. It is! Vincent finished his drink, then crushed the container. But as you noted, you are keeping a ledger of my omissions. Fair enough, Lily assessed. Both parties held secrets. Perhaps this was a stable dynamic. The arrival of a new customer interrupted the exchange. Lily provided service while Vincent receded into the background. By the time the customer left 20 minutes later, he had departed. A note remained, written on a receipt in a script suggesting a privileged education. Dinner tomorrow, if your risk tolerance is high enough. Biaf. Lily secured the note and failed to suppress a smile. He escorted her to a small, unmarked Italian restaurant that did not accept reservations from the general public. Vincent, however, was clearly known to the staff, greeted with familial affection, and seated immediately. This is excessive, Lily commented as they were guided to a secluded table. Do you have connections with everyone in New York? Only with valuable assets. Vincent held her chair. And the owner's grandmother prepares the finest carbonara in existence. A verifiable fact. I am not certain I even like carbonara. You will. His prediction was accurate. The dish arrived 40 minutes later, perfectly executed, and the first bite elicited a near involuntary expression of pleasure from Lily. Vincent observed her reaction with manifest satisfaction. I was correct. Fine, you were right. Lily consumed another bite. This is exceptional. Rose has used that recipe for 60 years. Some methodologies require no improvement. They ate in a state of comfortable silence, the ambient noise of the full restaurant feeling distant from their private alcove. "May I pose a question?" The subject, Lily, ceased eating, cleaning her lips. She offered a disclaimer, permitting denial. "A fair exchange," she noted, for her own interrogations. "Michael indicated you were not close, that your paths diverged." Her tone was clinical, inquisitive, over-accusatory. What was his meaning? The subject, Vincent, displayed a momentary facial tremor before resuming a placid demeanor. "Michael is a good man," he stated. "Works in finance, has a suitable wife, a home in Park Slope, entirely normal, quite respectable." "And you are not normal?" "No." "Respectable?" A curvature formed on Vincent's lips, not congruent with a smile. "That assessment is subjective. I am assessing you." "Then no, not in the least." He grasped his wine, ingesting a measured amount. "My family's enterprise avoids coverage in outlets like the Wall Street Journal. We operate with discretion, managing issues others are unwilling to confront." Lily's physiological arousal escalated. "What classification of issues?" "The type not suitable for discussion over this meal." Vincent lowered his glass. "My apologies. I recognize that as an insufficient response." "It is a response," she countered, "though not the one I sought." "Would further data alter this?" He gestured to the space between them. "This dynamic." Lily processed the query. Previously, her answer would have been an affirmative, a flight response to the first sign of risk or complication that threatened her constructed safety. Yet, observing Vincent in this setting, the candlelight reflecting in his eyes, she assessed she was too deeply invested for a clean extraction. "I lack the data," she conceded. "Possibly a reasonable position." Vincent leaned back, observing her. "For the record, my intention is to insulate you from all of it. The enterprise, the complications. I desire normalcy for this. Is that a viable outcome? Maintaining that separation?" "I will make the attempt." His jaw muscles tensed. "You have sustained enough injury from others, Lily. I will not become another perpetrator." The certainty in his statement should have provided reassurance. It instead induced a visceral, negative somatic response, a foreboding, as such grim resolve is only voiced by individuals fully aware of the damage they can inflict. Vincent let us select a new topic. He summoned the server, ordering dessert without consulting her. "Describe your shop, your duration of ownership." Lily permitted the subject change, feeling both relief and frustration. They discussed floral arrangements, business matters, and a difficult landlord. Vincent posed relevant questions, recalled details from prior exchanges, and elicited laughter with anecdotes of his associate Rose's grandmother intimidating critics. Beneath this social performance, Lily perceived the gravity of the unarticulated, the secrets Vincent maintained, the latent danger he alluded to, and the reality that her attachment was forming toward an individual she scarcely knew and did not comprehend. The tiramisu was texturally perfect. Lily consumed it entirely, suppressing thoughts of latent threats. The subsequent 3 weeks were a montage of brief encounters and controlled disclosures. Vincent appeared at her shop most mornings, providing coffee, sometimes provisions, books, or fabricated reasons to occupy her time. He escorted her to unmarked restaurants, undiscovered parks, a midnight film screening in Queens. Lily ascertained that Vincent was fluent in Italian and functional Greek, had no college education but read voraciously, and bore a scar on his left shoulder from an undisclosed trauma. She learned he was financially liberal but verbally guarded, possessed a powerful protective instinct and a dark humor, and that his first kiss under a Brooklyn streetlight induced a state of respiratory arrest in her. She also documented his periodic disappearances, lasting hours or days, explained only by a text. Business, I'll call soon. He always reestablished contact, always returned, yet Lily observed the post-event tension in his shoulders, his hyper-vigilant scanning of environments, and the phone calls taken outside with a subdued voice and a rigid jaw. She did not inquire. Vincent had established clear boundaries around topics he would not disclose, and Lily maintained her own psychological defenses, areas of her psyche kept inaccessible even to his meticulous scrutiny. It should have felt pathological, building a relationship upon a foundation of mutual secrecy. Instead, it registered as the most authentic behavior Lily had engaged in for years. "You are involved with someone." Sophie's voice penetrated Lily's thoughts. They were consuming coffee, standard coffee, not the premium variety from Vincent, and Sophie had been observing Lily with increasing suspicion for 20 minutes. What is the basis for that conclusion? Lily attempted a display of innocence which was unconvincing. "You have smiled at your mobile device 3 times. You are wearing cosmetics on a Tuesday, and you are exhibiting the look." "What look?" "I am developing a strong attachment and am terrified by it look." Sophie leaned in, her eyes showing keen interest. "Disclose. Who is he?" Lily paused. She and Sophie had a history of total disclosure, a bond formed in their sophomore year over substandard food and poor partner choices. But Vincent felt qualitatively different, a private matter. Speaking of him felt like it could break the construct. "It's recent," she stated at last. "I am not prepared to formalize it. Is it Vincent?" Lily's head moved sharply. "How could you know? Michael noted he had inquired about you. You danced with him at the wedding, and your current expression confirms my hypothesis." Sophie grinned. "I was certain. I observed his gaze on you that night. It's a complex situation. All worthwhile things are." Sophie's smile marginally receded. "But Lil, I must inquire, are you maintaining personal safety?" Michael stated, "Vincent is involved in serious matters." "What category of serious matters?" He withheld specifics, only stating Vincent is not a conventional person, that his family possesses a certain reputation. Sophie extended her hand, applying pressure to Lily's. "I trust your judgment. I just require confirmation that you are being cautious." Lily recalled Vincent's gentle hands and predatory eyes, his deceptions about olive oil, and the cold affect in his voice when he asked if her ex, David, had been held accountable. She recalled his habit of checking exits, taking hushed calls, and vanishing for days without explanation. "I am being cautious," she stated. The statement was not entirely accurate, but neither was it a complete fabrication. "And I am capable of self-defense. I am aware of that." Sophie squeezed her hand again. "Just promise me that if the situation becomes anomalous, you will inform me." No silent suffering. A promise was made. They transitioned to other topics. Sophie's career, a colleague of Michael's, summer plans. But Lily could not dismiss the prior conversation. Serious matters, reputation. What did those terms signify? That evening, in bed, the light from her phone illuminating the dark, Lily executed an action she had avoided for 3 weeks. She initiated a search for Vincent Russo. The results were minimal, a few references in corporate documents where he was listed as a consultant or advisor. A photograph from a charity event 5 years ago showed Vincent in formal wear, appearing listless beside an older man, identified as Antonio Russo, a philanthropist and businessman. There was no scandalous or revealing data. However, the absence of information was itself a form of data. Individuals with conventional lives leave a digital trail. Vincent had left almost no trace. Lily was still examining her device when it vibrated with a text. "Are you awake?" She should have feigned sleep, should have heeded Sophie's warning and increased her distance. Instead, she responded, "Yes." "Is everything nominal? May I see you?" "Now? The time is nearly midnight." "I am aware. I have a need to see you, please." The inclusion of please was an anomaly that caused a tightening in Lily's chest. Vincent did not petition. He made offers and awaited her response. This felt divergent, urgent. "My apartment. Signal upon arrival." He appeared 20 minutes later, and Lily knew instantly something was amiss. His hair was in disarray, his knuckles abraded, and a darkness was present in his eyes that triggered an involuntary step back from her as she opened the door. Vincent registered her reaction, halting in the threshold, his hands slightly raised. "I apologize. This was a mistake. What occurred?" Lily seized his hand, the injured one, and drew him inside, securing the door. "Vincent, what is the nature of your hand injury? A business meeting with a negative outcome?" He attempted a smile, but the expression was malformed. "The other party is in worse condition. That is not amusing." "I know." Vincent allowed her to guide him to the sofa, collapsing onto it as if his motor control had failed. "I'm sorry, I do not perform well in this state." "What state?" "The state in which I allow another to observe me when I am not composed." He examined his scraped knuckles, flexing the digits. "My standard procedure is to manage my affairs and then present myself with coffee as if nothing has occurred." Lily went to the bathroom, returning with medical supplies. Seating herself beside him, she took his hand. "This will sting." His tolerance for pain was notable. The subject, Lily, administered basic care to his wounds, exhibiting denial about their violent origins. Vincent observed his respiration returning to a baseline state. He then employed a classic grooming tactic, framing secrecy as a form of protection for her. "I cannot allow you to be endangered," he stated. "Is that clear?" Her compliance was immediate, yet she sought clarification of her role. Lily required assurance she was not merely an instrument of his escapism, but a significant factor in his life. The subject's value was immediately affirmed. Vincent began a process of idealization, claiming she was the only authentic element in his recent history. He described his other life as a series of inherited duties and obligations. When questioned on the nature of this life, he paused before responding. "My family functions as a nexus, Lily. We are the solution when conventional systems fail. The enterprise is extra-legal, hazardous, and has persisted for 3 generations." Lily exhibited a significant physiological stress response. She correctly identified the structure as organized crime. He described his function as logistical management and problem resolution. The recent altercation? A business associate attempted to alter an established agreement, a miscalculation on their part. Vincent's affect flattened, displaying a capacity for threat. I ensured they grasped their error. A typical individual would present a flight response. However, Lily engaged in cognitive reframing. She fixated on his prior displays of affection, a defense mechanism to mitigate the perception of immediate danger. "Why this disclosure now?" she inquired softly. The subject's rationale was to offer transparency as a prerequisite for their relationship's progression. His tactile gesture, tracing circles on her skin, served as a soothing anchor. "I am developing a significant attachment to you," he stated, "and you must understand the implications before reciprocating." The confession registered as a somatic shock. Lily displayed momentary aphasia, unable to process the conflicting data. "My world is dangerous. An association with me will inevitably expose you to that risk. I will attempt to insulate you. My protection will be constant, but its efficacy cannot be guaranteed," he continued, his tone becoming strained. He presented her with an ultimatum: disengage now with minimal consequence, or remain, accepting the inherent risks of his identity. Lily assessed their joined hands, his damaged, hers scarred, a classic pairing of traumatized individuals. She recalled past victimizations, warnings from peers, and every self-preservation instinct. These were weighed against Vincent's recent displays of attentiveness and affection, acts of calculated gentleness that fostered a powerful bond. "I am experiencing intense fear," she finally verbalized. "A rational response," he conceded. "But I am not disengaging." In her gaze, he observed a conflict of relief and apprehension. "I will remain for now," she stipulated. "If the risk exceeds my tolerance, I will communicate that." "A pact?" "A pact." He initiated an embrace, his somatic tremors indicating profound emotional release. Lily reciprocated the gesture. "Thank you," he murmured, a repeated affirmation. They remained in this state, acknowledging the paradigm shift in their dynamic. The urban environment provided ambient noise as Lily ritually secured her residence. She returned to bed, where Vincent slept, their hands still connected. The following morning, she awoke to find him already operational, engaged in a phone call. His vocal tone was clipped and authoritative, a stark contrast to his demeanor with her. "The excuse is irrelevant. A 30% discrepancy in the shipment suggests either theft or incompetence. Rectify it." After a pause, he continued, "No, I require identities by evening. Ensure they are confirmed. If this escalates, the accountability will be yours, not mine." He terminated the call abruptly. His posture relaxed slightly upon noticing her observation. "Good morning." Vincent's expression modulated, the cold authority dissolving into manufactured warmth. "I hoped not to disturb you." "You were unsuccessful," she replied, busying herself to manage her anxiety. "That sounded severe." "Business," he stated, reinforcing the boundary with a kiss. "Not your concern." Yet it was. Accepting his world intellectually was different from witnessing its threatening, tangible reality. "Listen." Vincent reoriented her to face him, his touch disarmingly gentle. "I understand that was unsettling to overhear. Is your work always like that?" "Periodically, when individuals disregard established protocols." His jaw tensed. "Diplomatic channels are my preference, but some subjects only respond to displays of force." Lily recalled his injured knuckles and the failed meeting. "And last night was not a diplomatic effort? It was a behavioral correction," he clarified, his gaze becoming distant. "My world has a strict code, Lily. Transgressions have consequences. It is impersonal, merely systemic." "That seems highly personal for the one receiving the consequence." "Perhaps." His hands fell from her shoulders. "But the alternative is anarchy, a system without accountability. Our method provides structure." Lily considered the inadequacy of the legal system that had failed to protect her from a past aggressor who received a mere 12 years. She perceived a grim parallel between the two worlds. Vincent's was simply more transparent in its brutality. "I have a meeting," he said softly, A noon appointment I cannot postpone. I will contact you later. Affirmative. Following his departure, she contemplated the true nature of the arrangement she had accepted. The clarification arrived 3 days later, on a Thursday. As she was closing her shop, 2 individuals entered. They were physically imposing, their bulk suggesting a dedication to cultivating strength. The lead subject wore a leather jacket, and his smile was incongruent with his flat affect. "We're not open," Lily stated, her hand moving discreetly toward her phone. "I reopen at 9 o'clock tomorrow." "Our business is not with your flowers." The first man advanced, while his partner obstructed the exit. "We are here regarding Vincent Russo." All of Lily's hyper-vigilant defense mechanisms activated. She maintained a neutral expression while securing her phone. "I am unfamiliar with that individual." An unconvincing denial. The second subject, marked by a scar, produced a phone displaying a recent surveillance photograph of her and Vincent. "A charming pair," he noted. Her physiological fear response escalated. "What is your objective?" A simple dialogue. The man in leather leaned on the counter. "Vincent has become an impediment to our employer's operations. We propose that a conversation with his girlfriend might persuade him to be more reasonable. I repeat, I do not cease the deception." His tone sharpened, the facade of cordiality vanishing. "We have maintained surveillance for 2 weeks. We possess detailed intelligence on your routines and residence. We have a complete profile on you, Lily Morgan." The terror was paralyzing, evoking memories of a previous stalker, David. Yet these men were not singular antagonists. They were professional operatives. "Vincent has no control over my actions," she stated, her voice remarkably stable. "Threatening me is not a viable strategy." "This is not yet a threat," the lead subject corrected. "It is a suggestion. Convince your partner to cease his interference with our shipments. Instruct him to abandon the territorial conflict in Queens. Inform him to concern himself with his own affairs." Upon refusal, the operative Scar produced an item from his coat. The subject, Lily, experienced an acute fear response, misidentifying it as a weapon. It was a dense dossier which he placed on the counter. "This file contains a complete profile, your medical history from 3 years ago, surveillance of your residence, and logistical data on your associate Sophie and her husband Michael." Scar's tone was clinical. "We are not predisposed to violence, Lily. However, should Vincent's non-compliance continue, his assets will be liquidated, beginning with you." The file represented a palpable threat. Lily processed the systemic violation of her autonomy and security. They had exhumed and weaponized her most severe traumas. Knowledge of David, the hospitalization, all the history she had attempted to suppress was now leveraged against her. "Depart." The vocalization stemmed from a deep-seated locus of anger, a part of her psyche she believed David had annihilated. "Exit my establishment immediately." "We are merely conduits for the message, sweetheart." "I instructed you to leave." The subject seized the dossier and hurled it at the men. Its contents dispersed, intermingling surveillance photos of her life with her confidential medical documentation. "You have no right to enter my space and issue threats. You will not use me as a pawn to manipulate another. Vacate the premises before I contact law enforcement." The operative in the leather jacket scoffed. "The police? You believe they are a viable resource. They are either compromised or willfully ignorant of Vincent's operations." He raised his hands in a gesture of mock compliance. Our objective is complete. We have relayed the message. Your subsequent actions are your own." They exited, the door's bell a cheerful counterpoint to the event, and Lily secured the lock with trembling hands. She then collapsed amidst the scattered intelligence, her respiration becoming shallow, mirroring the panic attacks from her hospitalization. The decision to call was subconscious. The phone was already in her hand. Vincent responded after the second ring. "Hello?" "I was just thinking about—" "They infiltrated my shop." Lily's voice fractured. "Two operatives. They possessed total knowledge of me, Vincent. They presented photographs, medical files, and threatened Sophie. They stated that if you fail to de-escalate, they intend to—" "What is your current location?" Vincent's tone shifted to sharp, tactical. "Lily, confirm your position." "The shop. I am at the shop. I've secured the entrance, but—" "Remain there. Do not move. Grant access only to me. My estimated time of arrival is 10 minutes." She could hear vehicle doors and an engine engaging. "Were you harmed? Did they make physical contact?" "No. It was purely psychological. They showed me." Lily observed the photographs surrounding her. Images documented her daily routines, illustrating a life lived under covert surveillance for an extended period. "They have been monitoring me for weeks." Vincent's reply was a volley of vehement Italian invectives. 10 minutes, Lily. Maintain your position for 10 minutes. He arrived in 7. The sound of his vehicle's abrupt halt and his forceful knocking on the door prompted Lily to grant him entry. As the door opened, Vincent initiated physical contact, pulling her into an embrace, one hand securing her head, while the other encircled her waist. "I apologize." His voice was guttural against her hair. "My apologies. This contingency was a failure of my foresight. A lapse in your protection." "You gave assurances of my safety. You promised to maintain my isolation from this." Lily disengaged, her anger overriding her fear. "They possessed intelligence on Sophie, Vincent, her location, her patterns. If she incurs harm as a result of my association with you, she will not be harmed. You will not be harmed." Vincent framed her face with his hands, compelling eye contact. "I will neutralize any individual who considers threatening you. Is that understood? Any individual?" "That is an inadequate solution." Lily pushed against his chest, creating distance to process the situation. "You cannot simply propose violence as a remedy. They have my location. They have my entire life. How am I to regain a sense of security?" Vincent's jaw tensed. "Assemble your belongings. You will be relocated to my residence until the situation is neutralized." "Negative." "Lily." "No. I will not be displaced from my home and my livelihood because these individuals believe I am a point of leverage against you." She crossed her arms, attempting to control her tremors. "You mentioned protocols in your world. How does this action align with them?" "It is a breach of protocol." Vincent's demeanor became cold, menacing. "Targeting non-combatants and family is a line we do not cross. Their decision indicates they are either desperate, incompetent, or both." Vincent accessed his phone and transmitted a series of messages. "I am deploying a security detail. My personnel will establish surveillance on your apartment, your business, and Sophie's building. Any hostile actor will be managed. Your personnel." Lily's laugh was a brittle, painful sound. "A week ago, my profession was floristry. Now I require armed protection as a consequence of my attachment to you." Vincent reacted as if struck. "If you wish to terminate our association, I will not contest it. You will remain protected until this threat subsides, and then I will be extricated from your life. Is that your desire? What I desire is irrelevant. Your safety is the priority. Lily observed him, noting the tension in his posture, the controlled distance he kept, and his hands clenched into fists. He was presenting her with an exit strategy, and the psychological cost of the offer was evident. Her mind catalogued his recent behaviors, the morning coffee, his non-judgmental acceptance of her past trauma, the gentleness of his touch. She recalled his admission of developing feelings for her, a rare display of vulnerability. I do not desire your disappearance. The statement was quieter than she intended. But I require you to resolve this, Vincent, not through violence or counter threats. A definitive resolution so I am not forced into a lifetime of hypervigilance. I will. Vincent closed the space between them, reinitiating physical contact. I give you my word, Lily, this concludes now. He executed his promise with unexpected speed. Within hours, 2 operatives were discreetly positioned near her residence, one in a vehicle, another in a local cafe. Her shop received a similar detail, with agents posing as patrons. Sophie contacted her that evening, her voice strained with anxiety. Lily, what is happening? Michael was contacted by Vincent regarding a need for protection, and a vehicle is now tailing me from my workplace. Lily closed her eyes, resting her forehead on the cold window pane. I am sorry. Deeply sorry. I should have disclosed this to you earlier. Disclosed what? Vincent is facing a professional conflict. Certain parties believe they can leverage me, and by extension you, to influence him. The admission felt like a personal failure. I attempted to compartmentalize, to insulate you from it, but my efforts failed. Sophie remained silent for a considerable time. Are you currently secure? Yes. Vincent has personnel observing my building. Good. That is a positive development. Lily could hear Sophie's unsteady breath. Michael is highly agitated. He was aware of Vincent's illicit activities, but never anticipated this level of encroachment. I understand. I am sorry. Cease apologizing. You are not culpable. Sophie's tone softened. But Lil, I require complete transparency. What is the depth of your involvement with Vincent? It is substantial. Do you have an emotional attachment to him? Lily recalled Vincent's protective gestures, his gaze that seemed to validate her, and the primal possessiveness in his voice when he swore to eliminate any threat to her. Yes. The word was a whisper. I believe I do. Then we will navigate this situation collectively. Sophie paused. However, should he be the cause of your death, I will be extremely displeased. Understood. Vincent did not return to her apartment that night. He sent a text near midnight. Managing the situation. Do not wait. Lily remained awake, fixated on her phone, resisting imagining what managing entailed in his world. She learned the following morning upon his arrival. He appeared depleted and grim, with new contusions developing on his jawline. It is concluded. Vincent sank onto her couch, accepting her offer of coffee. The men who visited you are no longer a variable. What is the meaning of that statement? It means their principal has been persuaded to withdraw permanently. Vincent drank his coffee, flinching as it touched a cut on his lip. And the 2 operatives who threatened you have been re-educated on the consequences of targeting civilians. Lily sat with him, analyzing his injuries and the profound exhaustion etched onto his features. Were there fatalities? No. Vincent made eye contact. The desire was there, but that action would have initiated a larger conflict, resulting in further collateral damage. Consequently, I utilized an alternative strategy. What strategy? A lack of knowledge ensures your safety. He set his cup down and took her hand. I can confirm the threat is neutralized. The security detail is no longer necessary. You may resume your normal life. Can I? The subject's laugh was bitter. My normal life does not involve the constant threat of personal data exploitation due to a romantic association. It does not contain bodyguards or threats, and she withdrew her hand, pressing it to her forehead. I do not know how to navigate this, Vincent. I am unequipped for a reality that is fundamentally abnormal. I know, Vincent's voice held a tremor, and I am aware of my repeated promises to protect you, but you are correct. It was insufficient. You merit more than this arrangement, more than me. She rebuffed the deflection. This isn't about your adequacy. Lily confronted him. This concerns my ability to exist in your environment without ego dissolution, and at present I lack a conclusion. Vincent gave a slow, measured nod. So what is protocol? I require a moratorium, a space to process without your gestures of care obscuring my fear. Lily's vocal cords constricted. Can you grant me this? For what duration? It is undetermined. A week, perhaps longer. She observed the distress manifest on his features, despising her role as its catalyst. I am not terminating our bond. I must ascertain if I possess the resilience your affection demands. Agreed. Vincent rose, and Lily noted the visible exertion his departure required. 1 week. I will maintain my distance unless summoned. And Lily, yes, your decision, whatever it may be, will be honored, even at great personal cost. He withdrew, leaving Lily in the self-imposed silence of her apartment, a choice she was already beginning to question. The subsequent week was the most protracted period of Lily's existence. She maintained her work routine, assisting patrons and arranging flora, feigning normalcy. But each morning without Vincent's coffee was a deviation. Each evening, devoid of his inquiry about her day, left her fixated on her phone, her fingers poised over his name. Sophie arrived on day 3, her assessment of Lily's state immediate, culminating in an embrace. You appear unwell. Thank you. That is precisely the feedback I required. Lily disengaged, producing a faint smile. And how are you managing? Better than you, it seems. Sophie occupied a stool at the counter, appropriating Lily's unfinished coffee. Michael is stable now. Vincent contacted him, explained the matter was resolved, and even offered an apology for our involvement. He did? Indeed, and it sounded authentic. Sophie observed her from over the cup's edge. So what is your intended course of action? Regarding Vincent? Regarding Vincent? Lily sighed, removing necrotic petals from a container of roses. I am unresolved. One part of my psyche desires to flee. The other experiences his absence as a functional impairment. What is your intuition? My intuition suggests I was foolish to form an attachment to an individual from a world I cannot comprehend. Lily discarded the dead petals. Yet my emotional center insists he is the first man since David to make me feel I possess value. You possess inherent value, with or without Vincent. Sophie's tone was both gentle and absolute. But Lil, I have observed his gaze upon you. That man would incinerate the city to ensure your safety. The issue is whether you can tolerate that degree of intensity from someone so dangerous. I believed I could. Then those men appeared, and I confronted my absolute lack of agency. Lily held Sophie's gaze. What if the next crisis is one Vincent cannot mitigate? What if another person is harmed? Then you confront it as a unit. That is the nature of attachment, choosing an individual despite the hardship, despite the fear. Sophie extended her hand across the counter, gripping Lily's. But the choice is yours, Lil. You cannot maintain this state of ambiguity indefinitely. That evening, Lily constructed a list. In one column, she documented the arguments for withdrawal, the danger, the opacity, the violence simmering beneath Vincent's controlled facade. In the other, the arguments for remaining, the coffee, the empathy, the way he perceived her scars not as damage but as strength. The list advocating for staying was quantitatively superior. She was examining it, phone in hand, when a knock sounded at her door. Lily's heart rate escalated. Only 5 days had passed. Not the full week, but perhaps Vincent's resolve had failed. Perhaps she checked the peephole and froze. Sophie was in the corridor, her mascara streaked, her eyes wide with terror. Lily pulled the door open. "Soph, what is it? I require Vincent's assistance." Sophie bypassed her, entering the apartment with a tremor so severe she was unstable. "I need you to contact him immediately, please." "What has occurred?" "Michael," Sophie's voice fractured. "Michael made a grave error. He borrowed funds from illicit sources to cover market losses, and now they demand $200,000 by Monday, or they will—" She covered her face, sobbing. "They presented photographs, Lily. Images of our residents, our relatives, everything, precisely as they did to you." A profound chill permeated Lily's system. What people? From whom did he borrow? "I have no specifics. Some usurer in Queens." Michael assumed it was a manageable risk, that he could repay it before it was detected. "But the interest is compounding, and we are overwhelmed, and they are making threats." Sophie seized Lily's arms. "Vincent can resolve this. He has capital. He has influence. Please, you must request his help." A stillness settled over Lily. This was the exact scenario she had feared. Vincent's world encroaching on those she loved. Yet the fault was not his. It was Michael's desperation and Sophie's terror, and a brutal reality that persisted regardless of Lily's awareness. "Very well." Lily produced her phone. "All right, I am calling him," Vincent responded on the initial ring. "Lily, I need you." The statement was delivered with more composure than she felt. "Sophie is here. Michael is entangled with the loan shark. They are making threats. It is severe, Vincent, extremely severe. I am en route. 20 minutes. A brief pause. Are you secure at this moment? Yes. We are at my apartment. Secure the door. Admit no one but me. He arrived in 15 minutes, and when Lily opened the door, a measure of the panic abated. Vincent surveyed Sophie's tear-streaked face, then Lily, and his expression hardened. "Recount everything," he instructed. Sophie provided a full, tearful report. She detailed how Michael lost nearly $300,000 in poor investments, and how panic led him to a contact from his gym. How the loan's terms seemed benign until the interest began to accrue weekly, not monthly. How they attempted to service the debt but fell into arrears. How the intimidation began subtly before escalating rapidly. Vincent absorbed the information without interruption, his expression immobile. When Sophie concluded, he retrieved his phone and placed a call. "Marco, I require intelligence on all usury operations in Astoria. Concentrate on those targeting finance professionals." A pause. "Yes, I am aware of the hour. Execute it regardless." He terminated the call and faced Sophie again. From whom precisely did Michael borrow? I require a name. Dmitri, or similar, a Russian man with an office over a delicatessen on Steinway Street. Sophie daubed at her face with unsteady hands. Please, Vincent, I know we lack a close relationship. I know this is a significant request, but Michael is paralyzed by fear and I have no other options. Where is Michael currently? At home, waiting. Sophie's voice fell to a whisper. They gave us a Monday deadline. That is 3 days. Vincent's jaw muscles clenched. All right. This is the protocol. You will return to Michael and instruct him to cease all contact with Dmitri, to make no further payments, and to take no action until he receives my directive. Can you do that? Yes, but no qualifications. I will manage this. Vincent's tone precluded any debate. But Sophie, you must comprehend something. If I resolve this issue, Michael is not permitted to repeat this error. No borrowing from predators, no reckless gambles, no embroiling you in his affairs again. This is a one-time intervention. Sophie nodded with frantic haste. I will ensure it. I promise. Thank you, Vincent. My deepest thanks. After Sophie departed, Lily remained in her kitchen, observing Vincent pace, while issuing directives into his phone with the same cold authority she recalled from their first encounter. When he finally concluded the call, the silence was palpable. You cannot simply absolve Michael's debt, Lily stated softly. Vincent turned toward her. And why not? Because that fails to address the underlying issue. It is merely... She searched for the correct phrasing. It is using your wealth and power to erase a symptom. What of the next individual Dmitri preys upon? What of all the others caught in predatory loans? Not my concern. Yes, it is. You spoke of rules in your world, of consequences for their violation. Does Dmitri not merit consequences? Vincent regarded her for a long interval. What is it you are asking me to do, Lily? I am asking for a genuine solution, not a financial one, not a simple erasure of Michael's liability. Lily crossed her arms, affecting a confidence she did not feel. Ensure Dmitri cannot repeat this action with anyone else. You are requesting the termination of his entire operation. I am requesting you perform the correct action. Vincent laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. The correct thing. In my operational environment, such a concept does not exist. There is profitable and unprofitable. There is strategic and foolish. There is survival. I don't accept that. Lily shifted closer, maintaining her position. You could have eliminated the men who threatened me. You chose not to, as it would have initiated a conflict. That was the correct action. That was pragmatic. It was both. She reached for his hand, sensing the tension in his muscles. Sophie is my primary female friend, Vincent, the sole individual who remained after I was deemed too psychologically compromised for others. If this problem is addressed with mere finances, allowing Dmitri to continue his pattern of destruction provided Michael is secure, my self-recrimination will be profound. A complex emotional state flickered across Vincent's features. You are proposing I initiate a conflict with an individual possessing significant social and territorial capital. This is not a trivial undertaking. I am aware. There is a high probability of collateral damage, including to my person. I am aware of that as well. A slight tremor was noted in Lily's vocalization. You expressed a desire to insulate me from your world. Yet I am asserting that such compartmentalization is impossible. My social network includes Sophie, whose network includes Michael, who is now submerged in your ecosystem regardless of our volition. Therefore, you must either commit to a comprehensive intervention or abstain entirely. Vincent withdrew his hand from hers and averted his gaze. Lily observed the rise and fall of his shoulders, a physiological indicator of his internal deliberation. When he finally vocalized, his tone was abrasive. If I engage this, if I target Dmitri, the methods will lack sterility. There will be no nobility. It will be a calculated and brutal display of dominance designed to communicate that I do not permit this class of predator within my territory. He glanced back at her. Can you psychologically integrate that reality? Can you reconcile with inaction? I have endured more severe outcomes. That is not a valid response. Vincent turned fully, revealing a raw emotional state in his expression. You are requesting that I operate outside my established parameters? To value abstract concepts like justice for strangers when my entire existence has been conditioned for survival in an environment that consumes individuals like me. I am requesting that you make an attempt. Lily reduced the interpersonal distance between them. You asserted I was deserving of a superior partner. Perhaps you are deserving of a life beyond the one you perceive as inescapable. For a protracted moment, Vincent merely observed her. Then he drew her into physical contact, pressing his face into her hair, holding on as if she were his sole psychological anchor. Affirmative, he whispered. Affirmative. I will attempt. The subsequent 48 hours consisted of a disorienting series of tense vocal communications and Vincent's prolonged absences, after which he would return with fresh contusions and grim operational updates. Lily assimilated more data about his world in those 2 days than in the preceding month. She learned of territories and allegiances, of the fragile power equilibrium that prevented New York's criminal syndicates from mutual annihilation. She learned that Dmitry Volkov managed a predatory lending operation which had financially crippled at least 17 family units in the past year alone, applying interest rates that rendered principal repayment impossible. That his affiliations with the Russian syndicate from Brighton Beach were tenuous, that his debt collection methods were brutal, but his operational security was poor. He lacked significant protection, Vincent clarified on Saturday morning, seated at Lily's kitchen table before an open laptop and scattered dossiers. The Brighton Beach element tolerates him as a sporadic source of opportunities, but they will not engage in open warfare on his behalf. So, what is your strategic approach? I intend to present him with a proposition. Vincent's smile was devoid of warmth. He is to forgive every outstanding debt he holds, not only Michael's, but all of them, and cease his operation. In return, I will refrain from systematically dismantling his entire infrastructure and broadcasting his vulnerability to every crew in the city. Will he accept the terms? Not initially, but compliance is the eventual outcome. Vincent closed the laptop. Individuals like Dmitry process a single variable, power. He currently operates under the delusion that he possesses it. My objective is to correct this misapprehension. Lily felt the impulse to inquire how, to understand the precise mechanics of Vincent's plan. But she recalled her commitment to Sophie, the fear manifest in her friend's eyes, and concluded that certain inquiries were better left unarticulated. On Sunday evening, Vincent arrived at her apartment with Marco, the asset who assisted with intelligence gathering, and another man introduced only as Tony. Their demeanor was courteous and professional, yet they projected a latent dangerousness that triggered an autonomic response in Lily. We require the use of your living room for several hours, Vincent stated. A strategy session. You can remain in the bedroom, or I can relocate you if this environment induces discomfort. Lily observed the 3 men occupying her small apartment, the dossiers and laptops, and the tension that permeated the atmosphere. Every instinct urged her to withdraw, to create distance from their impending actions. Yet this was also her directive. She had compelled Vincent to do more than resolve the debt. She had tasked him with rectifying the situation. At minimum, she could bear witness to the reality of that process. "I will remain," she said, "but the bedroom door stays open." Vincent's expression softened marginally. A reasonable condition. From the bedroom, she monitored their strategic discourse, their voices low and measured. She overheard them analyze points of leverage and tactics of psychological pressure. She heard Vincent's cold precision as he detailed the protocol for dismantling Dimitri's enterprise. The experience should have induced terror. Instead, she registered an emotion akin to pride that Vincent was undertaking this not solely for Michael, but for all the other individuals Dimitri had victimized. Around midnight, Marco and Tony departed. Vincent located Lily on her bed, feigning to read a book she had clearly abandoned pages ago. "Tomorrow," he announced from the doorway. "My meeting with Dimitri is scheduled for tomorrow afternoon. Does it present a significant risk?" "A high probability of it." Vincent crossed the room to sit on the edge of her bed. "He will not react favorably to my terms. He may attempt a physical counter, but you will have tactical support. Marco and Tony will be in proximity, and I am bringing documentation, evidence of every illicit action Dimitri has committed, every affiliation I can sever if he resists." Vincent's hand located hers in the low light. "This is me attempting, Lily, attempting to resolve this according to your parameters, I know." She applied pressure to his fingers, "and I am experiencing profound fear." "As am I." "Truly, indeed." Vincent's laugh was subdued, almost reflexive. "You induce in me a desire for behavioral improvement, and that is terrifying, because improvement necessitates caring about outcomes beyond mere survival. It means possessing something of value to lose." Lily pulled him down to lie beside her, allowing him to envelop her in the darkness. "Promise you will exercise extreme caution tomorrow. I promise, and promise you will return, always." Vincent placed kisses on her forehead, her cheek, and her lips. "I will always return to you." They entered a sleep state entangled together, and Lily dreamed of Flora blooming on scorched earth. Monday afternoon passed with excruciating slowness. Lily attempted to work, to focus on an arrangement for a wedding anniversary, but she experienced persistent tremors in her hands. She checked her phone at frequent intervals, awaiting a communication from Vincent that did not materialize. Sophie called as well. "Any update?" "None yet." Lily stripped foliage from a rose stem, flinching as a thorn punctured her thumb. "He is meeting Dimitri this afternoon. Michael is in a state of extreme agitation. He wanted to be present to, I am not sure, validate his courage or something similar." Sophie's voice was strained. "I instructed him to remain at home and let Vincent manage the situation." "Good." Lily attended to her bleeding thumb. "This is Vincent's operational theater. Michael would only be a liability." "Lil, may I pose a question?" "Yes." "Do you regret this?" "Your involvement with Vincent, I mean, with your current knowledge of his life, his world. If you could return to that wedding, would you still consent to dance with him?" Lily considered coffee and bruised knuckles, the way Vincent had assessed her scars and perceived strength. She considered the fear, the danger, and the acute awareness that an attachment to him carried a significant cost. "Yes," she stated softly, "I would dance with him again, even with full knowledge of the consequences." especially with full knowledge of the consequences. Lily set the rose down, observing the blood pooling on her thumb. Because he makes me feel sentient, Soph. For the first time since David, I feel as though I am genuinely living rather than merely existing. That is positive. That is very positive. Sophie's voice fractured slightly. I just hope all of us survive the subsequent events. At 4:30, Lily's phone finally vibrated. She seized it with such speed she almost dropped it. Vincent's text was concise. It is concluded. En route to you. Lily's legs felt weak from a sudden surge of relief. She texted in response. Are you okay? Define okay. But I am breathing, and there are no fractures. He appeared an hour later, looking depleted, but intact. A new contusion was forming on his cheekbone, and his shirt was torn at the shoulder, but he was smiling when Lily opened the door. It is concluded, he repeated, pulling her into an embrace. Dmitri is ceasing operations. Every loan is forgiven, every file destroyed. He will be vacating New York by week's end. How did you? It appears he had more adversaries than allies. When I presented evidence that his Brighton Beach connections were already preparing to sever ties, he understood that opposing me would leave him with no assets. Vincent's arms tightened around her, so he accepted the terms. And Michael, unencumbered. Sophie as well. I ensured Dmitri understood that if he ever approaches them again, there will be no secondary negotiation. Lily pulled back to observe his face, the contusion and fatigue and the intense satisfaction in his eyes. You accomplished it. You genuinely accomplished it. We accomplished it. This was your strategic directive, recall? Vincent touched her cheek. You requested I become better. It appears you were correct. I was capable of it. Does it feel good being better? It feels terrifying, as if I have just designated myself as a target for every other predator in this city. Vincent's smile was wry, but yes, it feels good. As they embraced in her doorway against the backdrop of a setting sun over Brooklyn, the subject Lily experienced a significant internal cognitive shift. She had come to accept the reality of their volatile, high-risk, and deeply complicated bond, consciously choosing to engage with it and with him. I love you, she verbalized, the confession emerging before conscious filtering. I acknowledge the insanity, the potential folly, and the definite terror, yet I love you. The male subject, Vincent's pupils dilated, his expression shifting to one of receptivity. Repeat the statement. I love you, Vincent Russo, including all your undisclosed history, your hazardous environment, and your maladaptive tendency to resolve conflict with coercion, Lily stated, a release of tension evident in her laughter. The subjects exchanged declarations of affection. Vincent initiated a prolonged kiss, a gesture laden with perceived commitment. His confession, I have since that first dance, maybe even before, served to solidify the bond. Their entry into the dwelling was uncoordinated, culminating in Lily securing the door. For the first time in 3 years, she neglected her ritual of checking the locks, indicating a profound transference of her security needs onto Vincent's presence. The subsequent week presented a facade of normalcy. Associates Michael and Sophie displayed remorse, while Vincent's security detail was withdrawn. A new routine emerged, with Lily resuming her vocation and Vincent his clandestine enterprises. This period of calm, however, was predictably transient in the context of Vincent's world. The disruption occurred on a Thursday evening, 2 weeks following the resolution of the Dmitri conflict. While securing her establishment, Lily received a call from an unlisted number. A moment of hesitation preceded her decision to answer. The male voice was unfamiliar and professional. Lily Morgan? Who is this? My name is Detective Chen. I'm with the NYPD's Organized Crime Division. A pause followed. I need to talk to you about Vincent Russo. The subject exhibited a significant stress response, but her denial was immediately countered. Please don't insult both of us by pretending. We've been watching Mr. Russo for 6 months, and we know you're in a relationship with him. Detective Chen's tone remained clinical as he detailed his knowledge of the Dmitry Volkov incident and the associated threats. Lily's response illustrates classic cognitive dissonance. Then you know Vincent helped us. He stopped a predator from hurting more people. The detective reframed the event, positing Vincent's motive as territorial control over a competitor. Chen then offered an exit strategy, stating she was a good person entangled with a very dangerous individual. Lily's rejection, I don't need a way out, demonstrates the depth of her pathological attachment. Chen countered by enumerating a dozen suspected felonies, including racketeering and extortion. We are building a case, Miss Morgan, Chen continued, and Vincent Russo is going to prison. The only question is whether you go down with him. The subject's somatic response included a tightened grip on her phone. What do you want? She asked. Information, testimony, he replied, presenting a clear quid pro quo. Cooperation for her freedom. Lily verbalized the conflict in terms of betrayal. Chen reframed it as an act of self-preservation. He concluded by urging a rational assessment of her future, providing a contact number which, due to severe psychomotor agitation, she was unable to record. Upon termination of the call, the subject experienced an acute sense of psychological burden. Her initial impulse was to warn Vincent of the imminent threat, but this was arrested by Chen's words about the consequences of her attachment. That evening, while next to the sleeping Vincent, Lily engaged in intense rumination. She attempted to reconcile two conflicting schemas of Vincent, the attentive partner and the subject of a major criminal investigation. The central dilemma became whether her effective bond could rationalize the profound compromise required. Vincent, sensing her distress, initiated contact. Can't sleep? He asked. Just thinking. About what? About us, about the future, about what happens when your world catches up with you. Vincent's demeanor shifted to one of high alert. What did you hear? Lily's response was evasive, a partial disclosure of her anxiety. Just scared, I guess. Scared that this is too good to last. Vincent employed physical comfort and verbal assurances of absolute control. Nothing's going to happen. We're safe. I've got everything under control. Yet Lily now perceived the disingenuousness in his confident tone. The subject then experienced a moment of crushing insight, understanding her attachment to Vincent as a continuous choice toward potential self-annihilation. She kissed him, perceiving despair, deceit, and the pathological nature of her affection. Promise me something, she requested. Anything. Promise me that whatever happens, you'll remember I loved you, even if everything falls apart. Vincent's reassurance, nothing's falling apart, was a mutually understood falsehood. She held on to him, weighing two scenarios of betrayal to determine the path of least psychic injury. The choice was binary, her own preservation or that of her attachment object. External stimuli, such as distant sirens, did not trigger previous security-seeking behaviors. The subject endured a night of insomnia, reporting a somatic sensation of pressure on her chest. Her mental state was characterized by intrusive visualizations of two catastrophic future scenarios, neither presenting a satisfactory resolution. At dawn, Vincent departed, apparently oblivious to her visible state of emotional and physical depletion, a behavior consistent with his narcissistic profile. Following his departure, Lily reviewed the unknown number in her call log. She acknowledged that contacting Chen represented the logical, self-preservational course of action. Yet she identified the start of her relationship with Vincent as the point she abandoned such reasoning. In a symbolic act of allegiance, she erased the call from her history. The subsequent days were a performance of normalcy, an attempt to suppress her hypervigilance regarding the ongoing police surveillance while maintaining the relationship's established rituals. Her anxiety manifested as paranoia, suspecting new customers of being undercover agents. This internal distress became externally visible, as noted by her associate, Sophie. "You look like you haven't slept in a week." Lily's attempt at misdirection, "just busy at the shop," was promptly challenged. "Don't lie to me! What's going on?" Lily hesitated, caught between the desire to confide and the fear that verbalizing the situation would concretize the threat she was attempting to avoid through denial. Yet confiding in Sophie would make the dilemma undeniable. "I got a call," she eventually admitted. "From a detective. He's investigating Vincent." After Sophie's shocked reaction, Lily detailed the offer of immunity for testimony. "He wants me to help them build a case." "And what did you say?" "Nothing. I hung up." Anticipating Sophie's counsel, Lily stated, "I can't do it, Soph. I can't betray him. Even if it means going down with him?" "Even then." The admission was both a confession of loyalty and a condemnation. "I love him," she stated. "And yeah, maybe that makes me stupid. But I can't be the reason he ends up in prison." Sophie then shifted her counsel, advising Lily to inform Vincent so he could prepare. "Then at least you'll face it together," she argued. Lily expressed anxiety that this action might exacerbate the situation. Sophie insisted, "He deserves to know, and you deserve to not carry this alone." That evening, confronted with Vincent's relaxed demeanor, Lily initiated the difficult conversation. "We need to talk." Vincent's affable presentation vanished. His body became rigid, a conditioned response to a perceived threat. "What happened?" "I got a call last week from a detective investigating you," Lily said, forcing eye contact. "He knows about us. About Dmitri. He wanted me to cooperate in exchange for immunity." A deafening silence followed. While Vincent's facial affect remained neutral, his hands clenched into fists. His query, "What did you tell him?" was delivered with studied control. "Nothing. I deleted his number. I'm not going to help them build a case against you, Vincent." "I'm not going to be the reason you go to prison," she affirmed, trying to control her tremors. "But you need to know they're watching." Vincent's exhalation indicated a release of tension. "I already knew," he admitted, momentarily disorienting Lily. "I've known about the investigation for months." He displayed sudden exhaustion, explaining his silence as a measure to prevent her anxiety, a paternalistic justification. When challenged, he responded with a bitter, rhetorical question, cynically dismissing the possibility of transparency about his confirmed criminal activities. "My attempt to compartmentalize you failed, as you see." Its failure was evident. Lily displayed a classic trauma response. The anger she perceived was preferable to the underlying fear. Her query about his plan was a demand for control. His strategy was textbook. evidence suppression and witness intimidation. Vincent approached her, his touch a calculated gesture of reassurance. My efforts involve neutralizing threats, securing assets, and ensuring potential witnesses become uncooperative. Her assessment labeled this witness tampering. He reframed it as insurance, his mandible tensed, a physiological stress indicator. He conceded his options were limited to damage control, acknowledging the likely negative long-term prognosis. Lily then created physical distance, a necessary step for cognitive processing. What is the protocol if they detain you? What becomes of our unit? You disengage. You create a narrative of separation, feign ignorance of my enterprises, and reintegrate into your previous life pattern. This is not a solution. It is the only available contingency. A vocal tremor indicated a crack in Vincent's composure. Lily, I established the parameters of this attachment from its inception. This is a calculated cost. Am I to remain a passive observer to your incarceration? Is that the expectation? If it ensures your safety, affirmative. He eliminated the space between them, his hands framing her face in a possessive gesture. I can tolerate incarceration. I can tolerate total asset loss. I cannot tolerate you becoming collateral damage from my directives. Lily exhibited signs of acute emotional distress, suppressing lacrimation. I detest this condition. I detest our inability to conform to normative social challenges. I am aware. My apologies. Cease apologizing and enact a solution. She seized his wrists, a physical expression of her demand. You are Vincent Russo. You resolve intractable problems. Resolve this. The situation is more complex. Simplify it. Devise an exit strategy that precludes your imprisonment or my complicity in your downfall. Lily's vocal pitch escalated, indicating extreme desperation. You professed an emotional attachment, validated by resisting this outcome instead of capitulating to it. Vincent observed her, his expression shifting as he processed the new data. He then initiated intimate physical contact, seeking solace as if she were his sole, stabilizing element. Affirmative, he murmured. Affirmative. I will make the attempt. This attempt materialized as 2 weeks of clandestine strategizing and encrypted communications. Lily became aware of Vincent's collaboration with a legal specialist, Elena, adept at case dismissal, revealing a months-long counterintelligence operation. The complication was the police department's comprehensive evidence linking Vincent to charges from extortion to illicit financial activities. Our optimal outcome is charge reduction, Elena stated during a briefing Lily mandated she attend, potentially reducing it to a minimal custodial sentence. What is minimal? Lily inquired. 3 to 5 years, with favorable conditions. Vincent's hand made contact with Lily's beneath the table, a tactile signal of support. That is an unacceptable parameter. Then a more significant offering is required. Elena observed them both with a clinical eye. Vincent's complete exoneration is contingent upon his cooperation with the state, providing testimony against a higher echelon subject. Negative. Vincent's rejection was instantaneous. I do not function as an informant, even as the sole method to evade prison. Even then, his jaw set, a familiar indicator of inflexible resolve. Betraying the organization results in my termination within a month. Incarceration presents a higher probability of survival. Lily experienced a visceral negative reaction. This was Vincent's reality, a closed system where choices led to mortality or confinement and loyalty superseded self-preservation. She felt an impulse to protest the fundamental inequity of his paradigm. to demand he prioritize her over a lethal honor code. Yet she recognized that compelling Vincent to abandon his principles would fundamentally alter his identity. Her attachment was to his existing persona, not a hypothetical version. "There must be an alternative variable," she stated quietly, "something we have overlooked." Elena and Vincent exchanged a nonverbal communication. "One may exist," Elena offered, "but it carries significant risk and depends on precise execution. Identify it. We permit Vincent's arrest. We allow them the perception of victory." Elena produced a file, deploying documents on the table. But prior to their action, we ensure the targeted disappearance of specific evidentiary materials. Key subjects will suddenly manifest untraceable financial trails and become ghosts. "You are describing obstruction of justice," Lily noted. "I am describing a strategy to ensure the case collapses pre-trial." Elena's demeanor was severe. "It is an extra-legal, unethical maneuver, but it has a probability of success." Vincent dismissed the idea. "Too many variables, too high a potential for catastrophic failure. Do you have a superior proposal?" "Yes." I vanish. The words permeated the room. Lily reported a physiological response consistent with cardiac arrhythmia. "Clarify, disappear. Your meaning is unclear. I exit the theater of operations. Depart New York, possibly the country. Reestablish identity where the New York Police Department has no jurisdiction." Vincent addressed Elena, avoiding Lily's gaze. "What is the required duration of my absence?" "Years likely, potentially indefinitely." Elena closed the file, "and it would require severing all contact with your network here. Family, friends, associates. Any communication creates a traceable link." "All of them?" Lily's query was audible. "Including—" Vincent finally made eye contact, the psychological pain in his expression palpable. "It would reduce the risk profile for us both." "Risk reduction?" Lily emitted a fractured laugh, a sound of distress. "You propose abandonment as a method of protection. I propose to keep you out of the prison system." Vincent's hands clenched. "If I remain and am arrested, they will interrogate you, apply pressure for testimony, and systematically disrupt your life to leverage me. But if I am gone, you are classified as the abandoned partner. You become irrelevant to their investigation. Except I would exist in a perpetual state of uncertainty regarding your status, living or dead." Lily stood, increasing the distance. "That is not protection, Vincent. It is merely a different modality of psychological torment. It is the only scenario that guarantees your complete insulation from harm. I do not wish to be insulated if the cost is losing you." The statement was an uncontrolled eruption of raw desperation. "I have already spent 3 years in emotional isolation after David. I will not revert to that state." Vincent rose and moved toward her, but Lily retreated. Do not make physical contact while presenting this as beneficial to me. If you intend to flee, be honest about the motivation." "What is it you require me to say?" "I require you to state you are afraid, that you are selecting the path of least resistance over fighting for our continued association." Lily's vision was obscured by tears. "I require you to concede that fleeing is a self-serving act." The accuracy of her assessment appeared to impact Vincent physically. He recoiled, bracing himself on the table. For the first time in their acquaintance, he appeared utterly disoriented. "You are correct," he admitted. "I am experiencing extreme fear. Fear that my attachment to you will result in your harm. Fear that my downfall will subsume you. Fear that I lack the capacity to be what you require. His voice fractured. Fleeing is easier, but you are correct. It would be an act of cowardice. Lily closed the distance, cradling his face. Then do not flee. Remain and engage. We will resolve this as a unit, and if we cannot, if victory is not a possible outcome, then we fail as a unit. She kissed him, the taste a compound of saline and desperation. But we will at least fail with integrity. Elena interrupted the moment. I must intervene. Our window of opportunity is closing. The police could mobilize at any moment. A decision is required. Vincent sought confirmation from Lily's eyes. She nodded. He turned to Elena. Elaborate on the strategy for case collapse. The subsequent week was spent executing a plan operating in the ambiguous zone between legal strategy and criminal conspiracy. Elena managed a network of operatives while Vincent leveraged past favors and issued calibrated threats. Lily observed the process, providing support where possible, and assimilating the operational dynamics of Vincent's world under duress. She also discovered a previously untapped resilience, finding she could process criminal data and witness intimidation tactics without an adverse reaction. Loving Vincent required accepting his entire psychological profile, including his willingness to manipulate and break legal statutes. The arrest occurred on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after initial contact from Detective Chen. Vincent transmitted a coded message. They are here. Adhere to the protocol. Her hand trembled as she replied, I love you. The feeling is mutual. Maintain composure. She ceased business operations for the day, returned to her residence, and awaited the next phase. 2 hours later, Detective Chen arrived, displaying a practiced sympathy. Ms. Morgan, it is my duty to inform you that Vincent Russo was apprehended this morning. The charges are racketeering and extortion. Lily had rehearsed this scenario with Elena. I do not understand the allegation. Vincent manages an import company. Ms. Morgan, we are aware of your relationship. We know the duration is approximately 3 months. Chen's tone was disarming. I am not here to arrest you. I require you to answer some questions. Am I being charged with a crime? Not at present. In that case, I require legal counsel before making any further statements. Lily's voice remained modulated, drawing upon the psychological fortitude she had developed over 3 years of therapy and survival training. I require you to vacate my residence immediately. Chen's expression showed resignation, not shock. My contact information is available should you reconsider cooperation. Following their exit, Lily secured the door with 3 distinct checks, then experienced a full emotional collapse on her sofa until catharsis was achieved. The arraignment occurred the following day. From the gallery, Lily observed Vincent brought in, attired in an orange jumpsuit that seemed incongruous with his person. His hands restrained before him. He located her within the crowd, and his rigid facial muscles briefly relaxed. The prosecution submitted its evidence, including testimony from subordinates, financial documents, and surveillance imagery. The evidence appeared conclusive, yet Elena dismantled it with surgical precision, undermining witness reliability and challenging the chain of custody until the case seemed merely circumstantial. The judge mandated bail at $2 million, which Vincent's family secured in under an hour. He arrived at Lily's apartment that evening, legally free, but for an ankle monitor logging his location. They embraced without speaking, a mutual understanding that this was the prelude to a prolonged conflict. The trial is set for 2 months from now, Vincent stated. Elena anticipates a high probability of having most charges dismissed. The remaining ones? Likely probation or community service. He created distance to observe her. There is a non-zero possibility I emerge from this, Lily. We could secure a victory. However, this victory carried a psychological toll Lily had not factored. In the subsequent 6 weeks, she witnessed the systematic erosion of Vincent's social structure. Associates vanished, professional contacts ceased communication, and the familial unit that provided his bail began to disengage from his legal predicament. The evening prior to the trial, Vincent's uncle Antonio, the philanthropist from a photograph, arrived. "You now represent a liability," Antonio stated directly. "The family cannot withstand the association with these proceedings." Vincent's demeanor became effectless. "I have invested my entire being into this family, endured violence for it, and committed homicide for it. And now you face incarceration for it, unless—" Antonio produced an envelope, placing it on the table. "Unless you accept this arrangement." "What arrangement?" "Enter a guilty plea to lesser charges, serve 18 months in a low-security facility. In return, you provide intelligence, implicating all superiors in the hierarchy." A palpable silence filled the room. Lily experienced a visceral cold as she processed Antonio's true demand. For Vincent to betray his entire network, to dismantle the family he served, to shield them from his trial's fallout. "You are instructing me to become an informant?" Vincent's tone was dangerously subdued. "I am instructing you to be strategic. Accept the plea, complete the sentence, and upon release, the family will provide for you. Decline, and you are isolated." "Depart!" Vincent rose, his posture more threatening than Lily had ever witnessed. "Leave my home before I disregard our kinship." Antonio left without further comment, the envelope remaining a toxic offering. "You are not giving that genuine consideration," Lily said. "Negative." Vincent took the envelope and discarded it. "But it clarifies my standing with the family." The trial spanned 3 weeks. Lily maintained a daily presence in the courtroom, observing the prosecution's attempts to portray Vincent as a monster and Elena's methodical deconstruction of their narrative. Witnesses recanted under cross-examination, evidence became inadmissible, and crucial testimony was deemed unreliable. The strategy's success defied probability. When the jury delivered its verdict, guilty on 2 minor counts, acquitted of all others, Lily felt a somatic release of long-held tension. Sentencing followed a week later. 3 years probation, 500 hours of community service, and a substantial fine. Vincent departed the courtroom, a man without legal encumbrance. That evening, they sat in her apartment, both neurologically processing the event's conclusion. "It is concluded," Vincent said, his voice laced with disbelief. "We survived the ordeal." "It is not fully concluded." Lily took his hand. "You remain on probation, under observation. But my status is not as an inmate, and you are not—" His voice faltered. "You were not compelled to testify, not forced to choose between self-preservation and your moral compass." "I chose you," Lily affirmed, leaning into his shoulder. "My choice will consistently be you." After a period of quiet, Vincent spoke once more. "The family has disowned me. My refusal of Antonio's offer led to complete severance. I am an outcast." "What are the implications for you?" "It implies I must construct a new identity, to discover who Vincent Russo is outside the context of a criminal enterprise's logistics." He turned his focus to her. "Is there space in that new life for a florist from Brooklyn?" A genuine smile formed on Lily's face for the first time in weeks. I believe space can be allocated. Over the following year, Vincent engaged in a careful reconstruction of self. He utilized saved capital, insisting it was legitimate to launch a consulting firm for small business supply chains. He fulfilled his service hours at a Queens Youth Center, educating adolescents on decision making. He remained with Lily, providing daily coffee, assisting in her shop, and building an authentic, transparent bond. The situation was not without flaws. Vincent experienced recurring nightmares of incarceration and exhibited hypervigilant behaviors. Lily had moments where anxiety resurfaced, prompting her to check locks 4 times instead of 3. They had conflicts over his tendency to solve her problems preemptively and her inclination toward emotional withdrawal under stress. Yet they were adapting and evolving into individuals capable of both autonomy and partnership. Sophie and Michael offered cautious support. Vincent made it unequivocally clear to Michael that gambling, reckless borrowing, and endangering Sophie were no longer options. Michael consented, began therapy, and started the arduous process of rebuilding trust. The primary stress test occurred 18 months post-trial when Vincent's probation officer conducted an unannounced visit, finding Lily preparing dinner in his kitchen. Unaware you had a girlfriend, the officer noted. I did not consider it relevant to my probation, Vincent responded calmly. All variables are relevant. The officer addressed Lily. Are you aware of his criminal history, of his actions? I possess full knowledge, Lily stated, and I remain present. The officer observed them for a protracted moment. Your disposition is either exceptionally courageous or remarkably naive. Likely a combination of both, Lily conceded, but I am content. After his departure, Vincent embraced Lily. You had no obligation to defend me. On the contrary, I did, because you are mine, and I do not permit others to disparage what is mine. Vincent laughed, a vibration Lily felt in his chest. When did you acquire such ferocity? I was taught by a master. 2 years after the trial, Vincent's probation concluded. He had met every stipulation, remained compliant, and built a profitable, legitimate business. The ankle monitor was removed, granting him true freedom. That night, he took Lily to the Italian restaurant where he had first professed his love. Rosa's grandmother was still preparing carbonara, their corner table reserved. I need to pose a question, Vincent began after the meal was served. And refusal is an option. In fact, refusal is the probable, rational response, as this is unorthodox, and our relationship spans only 2.5 years, and... Vincent? Lily extended her hand across the table to take his. Ask. He produced a small box, revealing a simple gold band with a solitary diamond. I acknowledge my imperfections. I know my past will be a permanent fixture, and that attachment to me is more difficult than it should be. But you incite in me a desire for self-improvement. You make me believe it is possible. His voice quavered. Will you marry me? Lily observed the ring, Vincent's tentative expression, and the future they were constructing from trauma and earned trust. She reflected on their shared survival through threats, legal battles, fear, and the profound, difficult choice to remain. Yes, she said, and witnessed Vincent's entire countenance shift with joy. Yes, I will marry you. They were married 6 months later in a small service at Sophie and Michael's residence, attended only by close friends. There was no large reception, No ornate decor, just two individuals vowing to select one another daily for the remainder of their lives. Lily wore a simple cream dress with a bouquet of the roses from Sophie's wedding. Vincent wore a suit devoid of its usual intimidating aura, appearing almost tranquil as he recited his vows. "I vow to provide you with coffee each morning," he said, eliciting laughter from a tearful Lily. "I vow to check the locks with you as frequently as you require. I vow to be truthful when the truth is difficult, and I vow to spend each day striving to be worthy of your love." "I vow to challenge your deceptions," Lily responded. "I vow to compel you toward betterment. I vow to remain when circumstances become frightening, and I vow to love you as you are, including all your scars." They kissed as husband and wife, and Lily experienced a deep sense of psychological integration, of returning to her authentic self. 3 years later, Vincent stood in the community center of his service, speaking to at-risk youth about making superior choices than his own. Lily observed from a distance as he established rapport with at-risk youths who perceived in him a shared history, a figure who had navigated their circumstances and found an exit strategy. Post-session, an adolescent female approached Vincent with pronounced anxiety. "What is the metric for a correct decision?" she inquired. "Specifically, how does one assess if an outcome justifies the inherent risk?" Vincent directed his gaze toward Lily. Lily offered a slight smile. "Certainty is unattainable, but occasionally one encounters an individual or a situation that prevents a bravery response, compelling a choice in spite of fear, or rather, because of it." "Is the outcome always favorable?" "Negative," Vincent conceded. "Erroneous choices occur with lasting consequences. However, sometimes—" He initiated physical contact, taking Lily's hand. "Sometimes the choice is correct, and it precipitates a total paradigm shift." The girl processed this information before retreating to contemplate it. Vincent drew Lily into his personal space, placing a kiss on her temple. "Are you in a stable state?" he queried. "Beyond stable." Lily leaned against him, registering the steady rhythm of his heart. "I have achieved a state of home." This was accurate. It was not the domestic construct she had envisioned as a quiet florist seeking anonymity, but a superior version. It was a home founded on disclosure and difficult decisions, on an unsanctioned attachment and trust forged through traumatic events. Vincent had established a foundation, funded by his legitimate enterprises, to help families escape the very predatory lending that had almost ruined Michael and Sophie. Lily, in turn, had expanded her own business, employing 2 assistants and undertaking larger-scale projects. They acquired a small Brooklyn residence with a garden where she cultivated her own flora, a place where they could ritualistically secure the locks and feel safe. They were not without dysfunction. Vincent still experienced days where the symptomatology of his past resurfaced, where he grappled with his former identity versus his current one. Lily still endured nights of acute panic attacks and psychosomatic pain from her scars, but they confronted these episodes as a unit. They constructed a life from the remnants of 2 damaged individuals who chose one another in a ballroom and maintained the bond. 5 years post-union, Lily awoke to find Vincent observing her in a state of hyperfocus she had learned to associate with excessive rumination. "What is the issue?" she articulated, still in a hypnagogic state. "There is no issue. All variables are correct." Vincent moved a strand of hair from her face. "I was processing the night of Sophie's wedding, my near absenteeism due to an aversion to family functions, how narrowly I avoided failing to encounter you at all. Yet you did not miss me." "No, I did not." He drew her closer, and Lily detected the muscular shift of a smile against her hair. "The best decision I ever made was requesting that dance." "The second best," Lily amended. "The best was delivering coffee the next morning." Vincent laughed, a genuine vocalization that still elicited a physiological response in Lily's heart. "Shall I disclose a secret?" "Always." "I was terrified that morning, certain you would refuse entry, contact law enforcement, or demand I leave permanently." "Why did you not?" "Because you represented a value greater than the fear you continue to." Vincent kissed her with deliberate slowness. "Every single day you are worth the risk." They remained in the morning light, two non-ideal subjects who had located one another and refused to disengage. Outside, the city's ambient noise began. Vehicles, vocalizations, the perpetual chaos of New York. But inside their small, fortified home with its rose garden, Lily and Vincent had built a construct impervious to that chaos. It was not a fairy tale or a perfect resolution, but a real, honest arrangement worth every harrowing and beautiful choice that led to it. And when Vincent finally rose to prepare coffee, Lily checked the locks only twice before joining him, initiating another day of mutually choosing their bond, their love, and the complex, difficult, and entirely worthwhile life they had constructed. Together from Psychological Fragments and Tenacious Hope.
He thought he was raising power, but he was really raising his own downfall. Everybody loves saying men like Vincent Russo are unbreakable, that crime bosses do not fear, do not hesitate, do not lose sleep. But this story tears that myth apart in the most brutal way possible, because Vincent does not start falling when rivals point guns at him. He starts falling the moment he meets Lily Morgan, a quiet florist with scars on her wrists and enough buried pain to recognize danger from across a room. And that is the first life lesson of this story. The strongest looking person in the room is often just the best actor in the room. Lily has already survived the kind of violence that changes the way a person enters buildings, answers phones, and touches their own skin. She checks exits before conversations. She keeps her sleeves low. She keeps her life small. On the outside, she looks calm. On the inside, she is living like every day is a controlled emergency. That is not peace. That is fear with manners. She has not stopped existing, but she has definitely stopped expanding. She is no longer building a life. She is defending a border. Then Vincent appears, not as a savior, not as some polished prince in a black suit. No, he shows up like trouble with expensive tailoring. He watches too closely, speaks too smoothly, and lies badly enough for Lily to notice immediately. Import-export? Please. The man carries danger in the way he studies doors and watches crowds, but Lily does not walk away. Why? Because people who have been broken in different ways can sometimes identify each other faster than anyone else can. That is the second lesson. Pain has a way of recognizing pain, even before love recognizes love. Now here's where the story goes from romance to emotional warfare. Vincent thinks he can keep Lily separate from his world. Classic mistake. The man lives inside violence, secrecy, and power games, and still somehow convinces himself he can build a clean little corner where love exists untouched. That is adorable. Also incredibly stupid, because reality does not care how sincere a man's intentions are. If his life is built on danger, danger will eventually come collect. And collect it does. The threats do not begin with bullets flying. No, they start smarter, colder, meaner. Men come into Lily's shop with pictures, medical files, addresses, routines. They know where she lives. They know about Sophie. They know about the hospital, the abuse, the trauma she spent years trying to bury under routine and restraint. That is the most disgusting move in the whole story, and also the most realistic. Predators do not always attack the body first. They attack the illusion of safety. They make a person understand that privacy is gone, that ordinary life can be opened up and weaponized. That is lesson number 3. Real fear begins the moment a person realizes their private pain is now public leverage. Lily's response is what makes this story hit harder than a typical mafia romance. She does not melt into Vincent's arms and say, "Go save me." She does not confuse possession with protection. She is terrified, yes, but terror does not make her stupid. She understands something Vincent has spent his whole life avoiding. Threatening people back is not the same as creating peace. He thinks if he scares the enemy harder, the problem is solved. She knows better because she already lived through a man who used power to dominate her life. Different suit, same poison. That is the 4th lesson. Someone is not safe just because a stronger person is standing beside them. Vincent loves Lily, but at first he loves her in the most dangerous way possible by deciding for her. He withholds truth. He manages risk alone. He calls it protection, but really it is control wearing a noble face. He thinks love means absorbing all the danger by himself. That might sound heroic, but it is still dishonesty, and dishonesty always sends the bill later. His secrecy is not a side issue, it is the fuse. Then the story pulls another beautiful plot twist. Lily, the woman who thinks she is fragile, becomes the one who forces Vincent to evolve. Not through softness, through moral pressure. When Michael's debt drags Sophie into the same kind of fear Lily knows too well, Vincent wants the quick gangster solution. Pay it off, crush the threat, move on. Efficient, brutal, temporary. Lily says no, she does not want a patch. She wants the machine broken. She wants the predator stopped so nobody else gets devoured next week. And that changes everything. Because Vincent has spent his life being effective, not ethical. Lily forces him to ask a harder question, not can I solve this, but what kind of man am I becoming while solving it? That is the fifth life lesson. Love that only comforts is easy. Love that demands growth is the one that changes destiny. That is why the story works. Lily is not there to decorate Vincent's darkness. She is there to confront it. She sees the parts of him that are loyal, protective, observant, and capable of tenderness. But she also sees that tenderness alone does not erase what his world does to people. So she draws a line. If he wants a future with her, he has to become more than a man who can win fights. He has to become a man who can leave the logic of violence behind. Then the police step in and suddenly the whole game changes. Now the threat is not just criminals, it is law, evidence, testimony, strategy. Lily is offered a clean exit, betray Vincent and save herself. This is where weak stories make love easy and morality simple. But this story does not. Lily is not choosing between good and evil. She is choosing between two forms of loss. That is why it hurts, because adulthood is full of moments where every option carries damage. Vincent, meanwhile, faces the collapse of the identity that built him. The family that shaped him, used him, and benefited from his violence turns cold the second he becomes inconvenient. Of course, systems built on fear do not love people. They rent them. The moment Vincent stops being profitable, his place disappears. And that leads to the final lesson. If a system only values a person when he is useful, it was never a family. It was a contract with emotional branding. By the end, Vincent does not really win by beating everyone. He wins by losing the old version of himself. He loses status, criminal belonging, the mythology of being untouchable. But in losing that, he gains something he never actually had before, an honest future. Lily also changes. She does not magically become fearless, but she stops living entirely under the dictatorship of her old terror. She checks the locks less. She breathes deeper. She builds. That is not small. That is revolutionary. So what is the real point of this whole story? It is not that love saves everyone. It is not that dangerous men become soft overnight. It is not that trauma disappears once the right person arrives. The point is harsher and better than that. A woman who thought survival was enough learns she deserves more than managed fear. A man who thought control was love learns that truth, responsibility, and change are the real price of intimacy. And both of them discover the same brutal truth. People do not heal when life gets easier. They heal when they stop worshiping the strategies that once kept them alive but are now keeping them trapped. That is why this story sticks, because the biggest plot twist was never the mafia, the threats, or the courtroom. The biggest plot twist was that the broken florist became the conscience of the gangster, and the gangster finally chose to become a man who could deserve the life he wanted.